Truth-tellers have always been punished for speaking out. It's a pattern repeating throughout history, from Socrates being forced to drink poison to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X being killed. Anyone who dares challenge the powerful risks everything. If a black celebrity with millions of followers uses their influence not just to entertain, but to educate and expose corruption, you'd think their fame would protect them. In reality, it only paints a target on their back. The system that profits from their talent grows hostile the moment they stop staying in their lane. When black celebrities stop merely entertaining and start revealing hard truths about racism, media manipulation, or industry corruption, the response from the powers that be is almost always the same: discredit, isolate, silence. Before the age of TikTok and Instagram Live, before hashtags could amplify voices in an instant, there were trailblazers who tried to warn us at great personal risk. They spoke truth to power when doing so could get you killed. And for many of them, it eventually did. Prince, Tupac, Michael, they all warned us. We just didn't listen. Come along with us in this video as we go back and connect the dots. Let's look at some of the most iconic black figures who used their platforms to call out injustice, only to be systematically silenced. Each of them had a warning for us, and each paid the price for trying to deliver it. But before we begin, we encourage you to subscribe. Our channel exists to preserve the messages that were silenced, the warnings that were ignored, and the people who paid the price for telling us what we needed to hear. If that resonates with you, then join us and help us carry this forward. Now, on to the video. In the 1940s and 50s, Paul Robeson was one of the first black celebrities to feel the full wrath of the system for speaking out. Robeson was a Renaissance man, an internationally renowned singer, actor, and athlete with a law degree. He had fame, wealth, and the ear of millions. Instead of basking comfortably in entertainment, he chose to use his voice to fight racism and injustice. Robeson spoke out against lynchings in America, supported labor rights, and condemned colonialism abroad. He testified at union rallies, gave fiery speeches at peace conferences, and used his fame to shine a spotlight on oppressed people worldwide. He refused to remain silent about the deep hypocrisy of a country that claimed to defend freedom while denying basic human rights to its black citizens. He even challenged President Truman directly, demanding federal anti-lynching legislation in a face-to-face meeting. When Truman refused, Robeson walked out. He praised working-class solidarity and anti-colonial struggles, and spoke favorably of the Soviet Union's racial policies at a time when the U.S. was segregated. In his eyes, the struggle for justice transcended borders, and that was precisely what made him so dangerous to those in power. First came the smear campaign. Robeson was labeled a communist sympathizer and a threat. His appearances in Europe and at international peace conferences were twisted into accusations of disloyalty. The U.S. press, once celebratory of his achievements, turned hostile. Media outlets branded him subversive. J. Edgar Hoover's FBI opened a file on him and began collecting surveillance, with agents planted at his concerts and public events. In 1949, after speaking at the Paris Peace Congress, where he asserted that black Americans would not support a war against the Soviet Union, a country that had not oppressed them, the backlash exploded. Headlines accused him of treason. White veterans rioted to block one of his concerts in Peekskill, New York, assaulting attendees while police stood by. It was a message: you've gone too far. The real issue wasn't his allegiance to any foreign ideology. It was his refusal to know his place and stay silent about black oppression. So the government stepped in. Soon, the U.S. State Department outright revoked his passport, trapping him inside the country as punishment for his views. This was a death blow to his career, since Robeson had been performing to sold-out audiences worldwide. Major newspapers stopped covering him. Concert venues canceled his shows. He was denied the right to travel, to work, and in many cases even to speak publicly. The entertainment industry and the government worked hand in hand to mute this powerful voice. By 1950, at the peak of his artistic powers, Paul Robeson was blacklisted and surveilled by the FBI, his recording and performing career effectively destroyed. Robeson went from selling millions of records to not even being allowed to travel overseas to perform. Imagine the frustration. one of the greatest performers of his generation, reduced to singing at a few black churches because no one else dared host him. But Robeson's punishment wasn't only professional, it was deeply personal. He was dragged before Congress, in front of the House Un-American Activities Committee, where they tried to break his spirit, yet he remained defiant. "You want to know if I'm a communist?" he challenged them. "My father was a slave, and my people died to build this country, and I'm going to stay here and have a part of it just like you." Robeson's fearless testimony only intensified the backlash. The message from the government was clear: speak out, and we will ruin you. And ruin him they did. By the mid-1950s, Paul Robeson lived under virtual house arrest in his own country. No passport, no concerts, rarely on the radio. A giant forced into silence. Though he eventually got his passport back years later after court battles, the damage was done. The stress and isolation took a heavy toll on Robeson's health. He spent his final years a shadow of his former self, his legacy almost erased from mainstream memory by design. It was only decades later that the world began to remember and honor him again for the hero he was. Robeson never stopped believing in justice, but the system ensured his voice would reach as few ears as possible during his lifetime. In his testimony to Congress, he stated plainly, "I am being tried for fighting for the rights of my people." And he was right. His story set the template. After Paul Robeson, any black star who considered using their spotlight to illuminate truth had to see what fate might await them. Robeson's silencing was overt. Government officials openly targeted him, but others would face more covert attacks. In the 1960s, as the civil rights movement surged, voices of change faced violent ends one after another. Activists like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were gunned down when their influence grew too large. Even influential black entertainers of that era met suspicious fates. Soul singer Sam Cooke, who had just recorded the hopeful anthem, "A Change Is Gonna Come," was shot to death in an incident so murky, many still question the official story. The pattern was emerging. If you were black, famous, and pushing too hard against the system, you became a target. Fast forward to the 1970s, the era of global political awakening and musical revolution. In Jamaica, Bob Marley had become the voice of the oppressed, a beacon of unity and a potential threat to entrenched powers. Marley's reggae music spoke about rebellion, peace, and emancipation from mental slavery. He preached a one-love philosophy that resonated with the downtrodden worldwide. But in a Jamaica caught between Cold War rivalries, Marley's massive influence was perilous. He tried to stay politically neutral, but his message of empowerment inevitably was seen as siding with change. If one man could get both the poor of Jamaica and youths around the globe thinking about justice, that man was dangerous to those who profit from division and inequality. The system's response to Marley's rising influence was not subtle. In December 1976, as elections approached in Jamaica, Bob Marley planned a free concert aimed at easing political tensions. Powerful forces took notice. Just 2 days before the event, gunmen stormed Marley's home and opened fire, wounding him, his wife, and his manager. It was a miracle Marley survived. Who sent the shooters? Many suspected it wasn't just local gangsters. At the time, Jamaica's democratic socialist government under Michael Manley was friendly with Cuba and seen as a threat by the United States. There were rumors the CIA had a hand in destabilizing Jamaica to prevent it from going communist. Marley's calls for unity made him an obstacle to those stoking chaos. In fact, one of the gunmen caught was linked to the opposition party and allegedly admitted he was contracted by the CIA in exchange for drugs. If true, that means a foreign superpower's agents tried to kill a musician because his music and charisma were that powerful. Marley refused to be silenced by the attempt on his life. Astonishingly, just days later, with bullets still in his arm, he went on to perform at that concert. On stage, he said, "The people who are trying to make this world worse aren't taking a day off. How can I?" His bravery electrified fans and likely further alarmed those who wanted him gone. Marley lived a few more years after the shooting, but the forces against him seemingly switched tactics from bullets to something much quieter. In 1977, Bob Marley was diagnosed with a strangely aggressive form of melanoma under his toenail. By 1981, at just 36, he was dead from cancer. It was chalked up as a sad twist of fate befalling a brilliant artist. But whispers grew over the years that maybe it wasn't just fate. There are those who believe Marley's cancer was not natural at all, but deliberately induced. A cleanup operation after the failed murder attempt. One eerie conspiracy theory claims a CIA agent gave Marley a pair of boots, gift-wrapped with a poison-coated needle inside. According to that tale, when Marley tried the boots on, he was pricked and infected with a cancer-causing agent. Fantastic as it sounds, this story refuses to die in the public imagination. It's easy to see why. Marley's sudden illness was awfully convenient for those threatened by his influence. Mainstream historians call the idea of Marley's cancer being weaponized a myth, and perhaps it is. But consider the broader context. Marley's impact had grown beyond music. He had literally stopped a civil war. For one night in 1978, during the height of political violence in Jamaica, he brought Prime Minister Michael Manley of the People's National Party and opposition leader Edward Seaga of the Jamaica Labour Party on stage at the One Love Peace concert and forced them to shake hands. The island had been torn apart by US-backed Cold War tensions, with Manley leaning toward democratic socialism in Cuba, while Seaga aligned with Western interests and US capital. Kingston was flooded with gunmen, many of them tied to political factions, and blood ran in the streets. Bob Marley's presence threatened to cut through that chaos with unity. He also gave hope to oppressed people far beyond Jamaica, with songs like Get Up, Stand Up. It's not far-fetched that some very powerful players wanted him out of the picture. Whether by conspiracy or not, Bob Marley's fate was the same pattern. Speak truth, unite people, then die mysteriously young. Like Robeson, Marley had also been under surveillance. Declassified documents later confirmed the CIA kept files on him. When he died, officialdom said, "No foul play," just as they always do. Yet a legend was lost right when he was arguably at his most dangerous to the status quo. Marley tried to warn us about love defeating hate, about spiritual freedom. Instead of heeding him, the system, perhaps aided by malign intent, ensured his voice would never grow any louder. Watching Marley's funeral procession wind through Kingston, with tens of thousands mourning in the streets, one might think the world would realize something was very wrong. How many revolutionary black voices would be cut down before people noticed the pattern? But the machine that silences dissent is nothing if not adaptable. The next battleground would be a new cultural movement rising in America's ghettos, hip-hop, and it would bring forth another outspoken superstar destined for martyrdom, one who explicitly saw himself following in the footsteps of black revolutionaries before him. His name was Tupac Shakur. By the early 1990s, Tupac Shakur had risen as one of hip-hop's brightest and most controversial stars. He wasn't just a rapper spinning rhymes about street life. He was the fiery, poetic voice of a generation of disenfranchised youth. Tupac was raised by Black Panthers. Activism and resistance ran in his blood. He read Malcolm X and spoke about the black struggle with rare passion in interviews. His music, while often mislabeled as gangster rap, carried deeply political messages about racial inequality, police brutality, and poverty. Songs like Brenda's Got a Baby, Keep Your Head Up, and Changes confronted listeners with uncomfortable truths about America. He often said he wanted to start conversations that would spark change, and he did, maybe more than he realized. Young black kids hung on to Tupac's every word, but so did others who felt threatened by what those words could ignite. As Tupac's fame grew, the establishment's eye turned toward him with suspicion. The FBI and law enforcement have a long, sordid history of monitoring and sabotaging black leaders. A program known as COINTELPRO infamously worked to neutralize figures like MLK and the Black Panthers in the 60s. Tupac, carrying the Panther legacy and influencing millions of youth of all races, fit the profile of someone authorities would keep tabs on. Indeed, it later came out that the FBI had surveilled many rap artists, including Tupac. In public, politicians railed against him. He was censured for violent lyrics and depicted as a menace to society. Vice President Dan Quayle even singled out Tupac's album after a young man cited it as an influence, saying, "There's no reason for a record like this to be released." The media, playing its part, focused endlessly on Tupac's legal troubles and run-ins with the law, painting him as just a thug, never mind the deeper context of his message. And yes, Tupac had plenty of legal entanglements, some self-inflicted, others arguably engineered. He was repeatedly arrested and prosecuted in highly publicized cases, from a shooting involving off-duty cops, where charges were eventually dropped after it was revealed the officers were the aggressors, to a sexual abuse conviction that landed him in prison in 1995. Tupac was convicted of first-degree sexual abuse, stemming from allegations made by a woman who claimed that he and others abused her in a hotel room. Tupac maintained that the encounter had been consensual and denied orchestrating or participating in any abuse, insisting that his only mistake was leaving the woman alone with his associates. Despite his protests, he was sentenced to up to 4.5 years and served about 9 months before being released on appeal. Each incident ate away at his revolutionary potential, forcing him to spend energy fighting charges or serving time instead of fighting the power. No, it's not that Tupac was an angel. He had a turbulent life and often fed into the thug life persona. But one has to wonder how much law enforcement attention he got precisely because he spoke what he called the truth. In an eerily prophetic moment, he once said, "I never have a fear of death. It's my only fear of coming back reincarnated," as if he sensed a premature end coming. After prison, Tupac's life accelerated like a speeding car with cut brake lines. He signed to Death Row Records for protection and clout, but that move plunged him deeper into danger. By 1996, at just 25 years old, Tupac was dead, gunned down in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas, the murder of such a high-profile celebrity on a busy street after a Mike Tyson boxing match should have been solved quickly. Yet here we are decades later, and his case is still not closed. Police at the time claimed they just can't figure it out, despite dozens of witnesses and even camera footage from the casino and streets. How convenient. Many in the black community and beyond have long believed there was more to it. It smells like either staggering incompetence or an intentional cover-up. Some theories posit that Suge Knight, Tupac's label boss who was in the car with him, orchestrated it. Others blame a gang retaliation. But a chilling theory backed by some investigative journalists and former insiders suggests the hand of the FBI or law enforcement in neutralizing Tupac for good. They had motive. Tupac's influence was growing exponentially, and he was talking about uniting gangs to politicize them. The COINTELPRO playbook of the 60s that targeted black messiahs hadn't disappeared. Tupac may have just been the next name on a long list of black visionaries marked for elimination. Is that too extreme to believe? Consider the aftermath of the shooting. Evidence like surveillance tapes were allegedly confiscated by police and never released. Basic investigative steps seem botched. It's as if solving the murder wasn't a priority. For law enforcement to have images of Tupac's killers and still say they have no suspects means only one thing: they don't want to solve it. Tupac's mother, Afeni Shakur, herself a former Panther, certainly suspected a conspiracy. The tragedy is that whether by conspiracy or street violence, the result is the same. Tupac's voice was silenced at 25, just as he was evolving from rebel rapper to potential social leader. In 2023, nearly 3 decades after Tupac's death, authorities arrested Dwayne "Keffe D. Davis, charging him with first-degree murder. Prosecutors identified Davis as the shot caller who orchestrated the killing, although Davis pleaded not guilty and claimed he wasn't even in Las Vegas at the time. His defense argued that other figures, including individuals associated with Death Row Records security, may have been responsible. In early 2025, his legal team requested more time to gather testimony from key witnesses they say could prove his innocence. The judge agreed, postponing the trial until February 2026. Davis remains in jail awaiting trial. Even now, the case continues to raise more questions than answers, with shifting narratives, new allegations, and decades of institutional silence still clouding the truth. The justice Tupac deserved remains elusive. He tried to warn us in his lyrics about corruption, inequality, and the need for change. He openly criticized a system that has money for wars but can't feed the poor, urging listeners to see the hypocrisy. For that, he was ridiculed, attacked, and ultimately many believe he was murdered. The public mourned, made murals, treated him like a folk hero after death. But did we listen to what he was trying to say, or did we let the sensational headlines distract us from his message while he was alive? By the mid-1990s, we had already lost a pantheon of black truth-tellers. Paul Robeson was silenced into obscurity, Bob Marley dead of cancer, Sam Cooke and others dead in sketchy shootings, and now Tupac killed in plain sight. You'd think that would have set off alarms. You'd think the pattern would be undeniable. And yet, the machine rolled on, hungry for its next target. The late 1990s and 2000s would see this pattern reach perhaps its most high-profile case with the biggest entertainer on earth, a man who had been a global superstar since childhood, now ready to use his immense platform to speak uncomfortable truths. The world knew Michael Jackson as the king of pop, a dazzling entertainer who broke every record and racial barrier imaginable in the music business. For most of his life, Michael stayed away from overt politics in his art, focusing on universal themes and incredible showmanship. But as he matured, especially by the late 1980s and 1990s, the toll of being a black artist at the mercy of a powerful industry began to wear on him. Behind the scenes, Michael was fighting epic battles for artistic control and fair treatment. By the early 2000s, he decided to go public with some of what he had seen. And that's when the media, which had spent decades building him up as an icon, decided to help tear him down with a vengeance. Michael's first act of rebellion was subtle but significant. He bought the publishing rights to a huge catalog of music, including songs by the Beatles, giving him leverage very few black artists ever had. This made him a massive asset, but also a threat. He had something the industry's power brokers wanted. Then, in 2002, during a dispute with his record label Sony, Michael did the unthinkable. He spoke out against the record industry's exploitation of artists, even calling out Sony's powerful CEO by name. At a fan rally in London, a fed-up Michael Jackson stood on a stage and blasted the greed and racism he'd experienced. He cited the history of great black performers who were chewed up and cast aside by record companies. The tradition of great performers from Sammy Davis Jr. to James Brown is that the story ends the same. They are usually broken, torn, and usually just sad, because the companies take advantage of them. They really do, he told a shocked crowd. He then calmly announced that he was leaving Sony Music, having cleverly fulfilled his contract. "I'm a free agent, and they're very angry at me," he said. "So the way they get revenge is to try and destroy my album." In that moment, Michael basically blew the whistle. He exposed how labels sabotage artists who won't bend. This was a black superstar openly calling out powerful figures and accusing them of manipulation. The response was swift. The press that had once worshipped Michael now amplified every negative angle. He had already been a tabloid target over his changing appearance and eccentric lifestyle, but after he challenged the powers that be, the narrative about him truly flipped. Suddenly, he was not just Wacko Jacko, but a criminal suspect. In 2003, out of the blue, Michael was arrested and charged with child molestation for the second time, after a 1993 allegation had been settled out of court. To be clear, any such charges are grave on their own, but many in Michael's circle felt the timing and zeal of the prosecution were highly suspicious. The trial in 2005 became a media circus of the highest order, painting Michael as a monster. Later, he was fully acquitted on all counts. The case fell apart amid lies and lack of evidence, but by then the damage was done. His reputation was irreparably smeared to much of the public. It's hard not to see this as the classic playbook. When a black celebrity gets too outspoken or independent, find a way to scandalize and criminalize them. Michael himself sensed he was being targeted. He often insisted privately that powerful people were out to destroy him because he owned valuable publishing rights and because he refused to be a pawn. In fact, Michael confided in his family about these fears. In a chilling revelation, his sister LaToya later said Michael told her, "LaToya, I'm going to be murdered for my music publishing catalog and my estate." He straight up predicted that they would kill him for what he had. Michael truly believed forces in the shadows were trying to end his life. To protect himself, Michael spent his last years in semi-exile, distrustful of the industry and surrounded by loyal but limited advisors. but he never completely backed down. Even in 2004, while preparing for a comeback, he released a song, "They Don't Care About Us," with scathing lyrics about society's systemic ills and a music video showing prison abuses. He was still trying to warn us, in his own way, through art. In 2009, anticipation swelled around Michael Jackson's redemption tour. This Is It, a series of 50 comeback concerts in London that would remind the world of his greatness. He was only weeks away from the first show. The public sentiment was warming. People were ready to root for him again. And that is when the final silence fell. On June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson died suddenly at his home, reportedly of cardiac arrest due to an overdose of a powerful sedative administered by his personal doctor. The news stunned the globe. It was truly the day the music died for millions. But as shock gave way to grief, questions emerged. How does a 50-year-old man, under a doctor's care, just overdose out of nowhere? Why was his doctor, Conrad Murray, giving him surgical anesthetic as a sleep aid in the first place? The circumstances were bizarre. Dr. Murray disappeared for days after Michael's death and was later found guilty of involuntary manslaughter for negligence. He claimed others were involved behind the scenes, but those leads were never pursued. Officially, it was all just a tragic accident. Yet many of Michael's family and fans do not buy that it was merely an accident. They point to the fact that immediately after Michael died, control of his lucrative music catalog and estate shifted. The same corporations and individuals Michael fought against ended up benefiting enormously from his death. Within months, Sony, the label he had called out, secured a massive deal for Michael's unreleased music. His posthumous concert film and albums made fortunes for others. LaToya Jackson publicly stated she believed Michael was murdered in a conspiracy, and she noted how some people Michael had feared swooped in to manage his assets after he was gone. It's a lot to unpack, and concrete proof remains elusive. But ask yourself, if Michael Jackson truly was taken out intentionally, would it really surprise you? He had told us the system chews up artists and spits them out. He tried to warn other black artists, this industry will enslave you if you let it, even comparing record contracts to slavery in his speeches and actions. He fought for ownership and won, only to die when he was poised to speak louder than ever. Perhaps the most bitter irony is that in death, the same media that vilified him began to sing his praises again. It's as if the system says, we'll destroy you while you're alive, but we'll mourn you when you're gone. After all, dead legends can't cause real trouble. Michael Jackson's fate was a loud, ringing alarm. But did we hear it? Or did we let the spectacle of his downfall and the sentimentality of his tribute concerts drown out the truth he was pointing at? By the 2010s, one might hope this pattern would have ended, but the machine that silences truth only refined its methods. The targets were fewer. Not many dared step out of line after seeing what happened to those before, yet some still did. One of them was an artist who had always been revolutionary in his approach to the music business, Prince. A contemporary of Michael Jackson, Prince's battles with the industry were legendary. In the 1990s, he infamously wrote "slave" on his face and changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol to protest how his record label, Warner Brothers, controlled his work. Prince was outspoken that artists, especially black artists, were treated like property. He literally likened record contracts to slavery, refusing to be owned. Many scoffed at him back then, or found it eccentric. But Prince was ahead of his time in calling for musicians' rights. He took heat for it, but he never stopped pushing for control over his art. For years, Prince remained somewhat at the fringes of the mainstream music scene, doing things his own way. He released music independently, fought and won battles to regain ownership of his master recordings, and encouraged younger artists to demand better deals. By 2014, in a twist no one expected, Prince actually made peace with Warner Brothers. The label returned to him the master tapes of his classic albums and gave him unprecedented control. It was a huge victory. Prince had beaten the industry at its own game, something almost unheard of. Perhaps that was the final straw, because Prince, too, did not only stick to entertainment. In his later years, he spoke out more about broader issues. In a televised interview, he talked about a topic as controversial as they come, the chemtrail conspiracy. suggesting that chemicals were being sprayed in black neighborhoods to incite violence. He said it on PBS, inspired by activist Dick Gregory, and even wrote a song called Dreamer, with lyrics about society's lies and keeping one eye open for these devils. Prince also publicly questioned the status quo in other ways, from not voting in elections he viewed as flawed to advocating for spiritual and financial independence from the establishment. Here was a man who had freed himself from music industry bondage and started using his platform to ask dangerous questions. For the system, that combination was unacceptable. In April 2016, news broke that Prince had died suddenly at his Paisley Park estate. The cause, an accidental overdose of fentanyl, a powerful opioid painkiller. It was the exact kind of ending everyone would expect the least from Prince. He was known to live clean. He didn't even drink alcohol, was a vegetarian, and reportedly disdained hard drugs. How did he end up alone in an elevator, dying from counterfeit pain pills laced with a drug 50 times stronger than heroin? The official story is that Prince suffered from hip pain, got addicted to painkillers, and tragically OD'd on a bad batch. A case of chronic pain meets unlucky timing. And maybe that's exactly what happened, but it's hard not to raise an eyebrow at the coincidences. Prince died at 57, with years of music still in him, just after triumphantly securing his life's work and masters. No criminal charges were ever filed related to his death. It was treated as a misfortune, nothing more. Yet rumors swirl. Some close to him can't accept that such a careful man would pop random pills without knowing their origin. Prince himself had told friends he was concerned about the spate of high-profile black entertainers dying suddenly. A couple of years earlier, he'd even tweeted hints about being wary of the system. Of course, none of this is concrete evidence of foul play, but when you line it up next to everything that happened before, it fits the pattern too neatly. Prince spoke loud truth to artists and fans, and he ended up inexplicably dead at a moment that benefited the music industry, which could now exploit his unreleased vault of songs without his interference. Once again, no foul play was the official mantra, and the world simply moved on, adding Prince's name to the tragic roll call of genius gone too soon. By the mid-2000s, other voices had been silenced as well in similarly eerie ways. Whitney Houston, one of the greatest singers of all time, had been very private about any criticism of the industry, yet her very life became a cautionary tale. The media hounded her for years over her struggles with addiction, turning a beloved superstar into the butt of cruel jokes. In 2012, Whitney died under strange circumstances in a hotel bathtub on the eve of the Grammy Awards, an event hosted by the same record executive who discovered her. It was ruled an accidental drowning compounded by drug use. People mourned, tributes poured in, and the same tabloids that lampooned her suddenly sang her praises. Few asked hard questions about the environment that enabled her downfall, or the eerie similarity to how her own daughter would drown years later. And in 2002, rapper Lisa Left Eye Lopes from TLC, who had been on a spiritual retreat in Honduras, seeking truth and healing away from the limelight, was killed in a violent car crash. In a documentary filmed during her final days, Left Eye spoke of feeling a spirit following her, meant to do her harm. In a haunting twist, a car she was in struck and killed a little boy with the last name Lopez, her own last name, just weeks before her accident. Left Eye interpreted it as the spirit taking the wrong life first. She believed she was marked for death next. Shortly after, she indeed lost her life as well. At age 30, on the cusp of a new chapter and possibly new revelations, she had been spending time with Dr. Sebi, a controversial figure who claimed to cure AIDS and whom some accuse of being targeted by authorities as well. It seemed that even stepping away from the spotlight wasn't enough to save those who the system had in its sights. How many more examples do we need? It goes on. Jimi Hendrix in 1970, outspoken at times about racial issues, dead at 27 in an overdose many find suspicious. Peter Tosh, Marley's fellow truth-telling reggae icon, gunned down in 1987. Prodigy of Mobb Deep, who spoke about the Illuminati in hip-hop, died in an unusual accident in 2017. Nipsey Hussle, an emerging community-focused rapper who was working on a documentary about Dr. Sebi's teachings, shot dead in 2019 in his own neighborhood. With each, The pattern repeats: speak out, get mocked or marginalized, then die prematurely under cloudy circumstances. Always heart attack or accident or random violence. Always just a freak coincidence. And maybe sometimes it is. But can they all be? We have to face an uncomfortable truth of our own. Perhaps these aren't just personal tragedies, but part of an intentional strategy. A strategy by whom exactly? That's the tricky part. It isn't one single Bond movie villain orchestrating everything. It's a system, an entire power structure with many actors, record executives, corporate media owners, government agencies, etc., whose interests align in keeping the black entertainer as a controlled source of profit, not a source of revolutionary social change. When that system feels threatened, it reacts, sometimes with a smear campaign, sometimes with legal or financial pressure, and sometimes, when those don't work, with the ultimate sanction. The deaths of these stars often conveniently remove a problem and create a martyr the industry can then profit from posthumously. It's a sick, twisted cycle. Prince, Tupac, Michael, all of these powerful figures warned us about racism, about exploitation, about media brainwashing and systematic corruption. They embedded messages in their lyrics, spoke out in interviews, or took symbolic actions hoping we'd pay attention. Many of them sensed what was coming. Tupac spoke of not living past 25. Left Eye talked about the spirit chasing her. Michael told his family he feared being killed for his catalog. They knew the cost of truth in a world built on lies. And when the hammer came down on them, we, the public, mostly bought the official stories. We let the media convince us that Robeson was a communist traitor, that Marley's cancer was just bad luck, that Tupac's death was just gang violence, that Michael was just a drug-addled eccentric, that Prince just popped one too many pills. We moved on quickly, consuming the next album, the next movie, the next headline, just as the system intended. But now, looking back, the pattern is glaring. This isn't about indulging in wild conspiracy theories. It's about recognizing a historical pattern of control. As the saying goes, once is chance, twice is coincidence, but dozens of times is a pattern. When black icons challenge power, they get crushed, one way or another. It's a pattern rooted in centuries of fear. Fear of the truth they speak, fear of the unity they might inspire, fear of losing control over the masses. Every time a Prince or a Tupac is silenced, it sends a message to other celebrities. Stay in line, or you're next. And tragically, it mostly works. How many mainstream artists today dare to be as bold? The system learned that very public executions are messy. Better to destroy someone's image first, and if that fails, handle it quietly and call it an accident. Yet, even as we mourn these losses, there is a spark of hope in acknowledging the pattern, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The voices of Prince, Tupac, Michael, Marley, Robeson, Whitney, Left Eye, they aren't entirely gone. They live on in recordings, in film, in print, waiting for us to finally absorb the warnings they contained. Perhaps their fates can awaken us rather than intimidate us. Perhaps we, the public, can decide not to be so easily manipulated next time a powerful black figure speaks out and is suddenly torn down by scandal or ridicule. Maybe we can support them, believe them, listen to them while they are alive, instead of just crying for them once they're dead. For the system, maintaining control has been worth destroying lives and legacies. But for us, the people, the truth is priceless. Let's honor those who tried to enlighten us by heeding their message now. They all warned us. We just didn't listen. And it's time that we do. If we collectively start to listen and question and refuse to be deceived, maybe we can break this pattern. Maybe the silencing will finally stop when the truth tellers have an army of believers behind them. That perhaps is what the system fears most, and what the likes of Prince, Tupac, and Michael were trying to achieve. Their voices were silenced, but our voices together can be louder. The pattern is clear. The decision to see it is ours. Coincidence or a long overdue wake-up call? You decide. If this opens something in you, a question, a memory, a fire, don't let it fade. Share this video. Speak about it. Keep the names alive, not through tribute, but through truth. What they tried to say still matters, and what was done to them still matters. If you believe in that, in refusing to forget, in choosing to see the pattern for what it is, then subscribe to our channel, where buried truths are brought to light and voices forced into silence get a chance to speak again. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.